Most Christians who teach the New Testament want to refer to the underlying Greek text from time to time. But how if you've never studied Greek in seminary? These videos will show you, as they'll teach you the minimum amount of Koine Greek needed while maximizing your study time. Eventually you'll appear to be a scholar in your own right. I've reduced the learning process to a series of steps. This video addresses the first step, which is to learn how to properly pronounce Greek words. If you stand before people and attempt to speak Greek words but don't know how to correctly pronounce them, you'll feel awkward, will appear out of place, and will make a spectacle of yourself in front of the few who actually know how the words should be spoken. Fortunately, speaking Greek words isn't difficult since, unlike English, written Greek is phonetic, which means the way it sounds is the way it's spelled. This is all the more true of the Erasmian system of pronunciation, which for better or for worse is the accepted standard. I'll give you some guidelines. Know this. These guidelines correct the biggest mistakes I hear people make when speaking Koine Greek words. Adopt the guidelines and you'll avoid the common mistakes. So, number 1, get the vowels right. Number 2, stress the correct syllable. Number 3, use a Strong's Concordance to fill in the missing pieces. Even if you never get around to learning the entire Greek alphabet, learn the letters for the vowels. Concentrate on their lowercase forms, just ignore the uppercase when beginning, since uppercase letters are uncommon, and furthermore most of the uppercase letters are the same between English and Greek anyways. By just learning the vowels, your pronunciation will improve by an order of magnitude. On the flip side of the coin, there are those who have memorized the entire Greek alphabet but still mispronounce the vowels. If you mispronounce a vowel, you've blown the pronunciation. Greek basically has the same vowels as English with a couple of exceptions. The Greek vowels are alpha, epsilon, iota, omicron, and upsilon, and they correspond to A, E, I, O, and both U and Y. In addition, Greek has a couple of extra vowels, the long vowels eta and omega. These have no corresponding English equivalents. Use these English words as guides for their pronunciation. Alpha, A as in father, epsilon, E as in end, eta, A as in cake, iota, I as in lit, or E as in Mardi Gras, omicron, A as in hop, upsilon, U as in tutor, omega, O as in mode. Something to take note of is that the starting sound of the name of the vowel and the way the vowel is pronounced are close, if not identical. For example, omicron begins with an A sound, eta begins with an A sound, omega begins with an O sound. Let's take a look at some single-syllable Greek words to sample the vowel sounds. There's accent marks above most of them. Remember these for later. So for alpha, the word gar, which means for, epsilon, te, which means end, iota, tis, which means who, what, someone, eta, main, which means month, upsilon, noon, which means now, omega, phos, which means light. There are certain two vowel combinations which, when they occur in sequence, form another vowel. Such a pair is called a diphthong, and both English and Greek have them. Here's the list of Greek diphthongs, a couple of minor ones excluded, and the way they're pronounced. Alpha, iota, I as in isle, epsilon, iota, A as in freight, omicron, iota, oi as in boil, upsilon, iota, we as in sweet, alpha, upsilon, al as in kraut, epsilon, upsilon, u as in feud, omicron, upsilon, u as in soup. Notice that these diphthongs always have an iota or an upsilon for a second letter. Also, you don't see either of the long vowels eta and omega here. Before starting, let's review some of the essentials of syllables and accentuation. Accentuation is stressing one of the syllables in a word when speaking that word, stressing the correct syllable, that is. Consider the word guitar broken into its two syllables, gi and tar. In some parts of the U.S. they say guitar, and in other places they say guitar. In either case, an accent mark is placed at the end of the syllable which is stressed. So guitar would be like this, and guitar would be like that. Guitar and guitar again use another notation. Instead of an accent mark, the syllable is capitalized. Along with this, the true spelling is changed to something more phonetic. I'll only use the second notation from here on out. Here's insurance, and insurance. The Strong's section of BibleHub.com uses the second notation. Take the word agape. Let's look at agape in BibleHub. Notice how agape has three syllables, a, ga, and pe. Notice how the pronunciation entry shows the breakdown of the three syllables and that the second syllable should be stressed. Since the second syllable is capitalized, it's the syllable which is stressed when spoken. Hypothetically speaking, if the accentuation stressed the first syllable, it would appear in Strong's like this and be pronounced agape. If the accentuation were on the last syllable, it would appear in the pronunciation guide like this and would be spoken agape. As you get more comfortable with the Greek vowel letters, you'll be able to identify and isolate the vowels from the Greek spelling and use that instead of the pronunciation entry, as your mind will begin to prefer the Greek letters over the English entry, and the more you do this, the more it'll clarify any doubts or ambiguities as to the pronunciation. I've transitioned into the final point. Like a set of training wheels on a toddler's bicycle, use the Strong's pronunciation entry until such a time as you transfer away from the English and to the Greek spelling and thus take the training wheels off. The reason for memorizing the Greek vowel letters comes into play now. You see, the English pronunciation entry will leave you scratching your head from time to time. When in doubt, look at the Greek word and pick out the vowel letters, even if you haven't mastered the new letters yet. Let's do this with the word theos, which means God. The pronunciation entry looks a bit strange, at least to me. Go to the word as spelled in Greek and pick out the vowels. There are two vowels, an epsilon followed by an omicron. Incidentally, this is an example of two vowels not forming a diphthong. Does epsilon omicron appear in the diphthong table? No, it doesn't. So the vowels are pronounced independently as two separate vowels. Also note the accent mark over the omicron. Cross-compare this with the pronunciation entry. The omicron is stressed, so the word is pronounced theos and not theos. Similar to theos, the word for darkness has consecutive vowels that don't form a diphthong. For this word, there are three vowels and no diphthongs. Vowels and diphthongs are the foundation of syllables, and Scotia has three vowels, so it has three syllables. The accent is on the second syllable, which is the second vowel, the letter iota. Remember when I said there's a second way of pronouncing iota? This is a case where it's pronounced E instead of I. Try saying Scotia with an I sound instead of an E sound. Isn't the E sound more fluid? Try this next word on your own. Did you get lithos? How about this one? Did you get onoma? Here's a tougher one. It's pistuo. There's some additional information you need to know as you progress through your study of Greek vowels. First, accent marks. Greek has three kinds. They're called the acute, the circumflex, and the grave. Accent marks appear over a vowel and over the second vowel of a diphthong. Here's an omicron with an acute. Here's an upsilon with a circumflex. Here's an omicron with a grave. Treat all three accent marks as though they're the same for now until such a time as you need to revisit them, if you ever do. Second, if a word begins with a vowel, the vowel is marked with something called a breathing mark. Breathing marks look like a tiny left or right parenthesis over a vowel. A soft breathing mark is the left parenthesis, and a hard breathing mark is a right parenthesis. If the breathing mark is soft, just ignore it. If it's hard, add a letter H before the word. There can be both a breathing mark and an accent over a vowel. In this case, the breathing mark comes first. Third, there's a marking called an iota subscript. For example, it's that little letter iota under the omega. These can be safely ignored. Following these guidelines will correct most of the pronunciation mistakes I hear pastors and preachers regularly make. But to master this topic, you'll have to learn the consonants too, and then wean yourself off the English pronunciation guides altogether. This is not as hard as you might think. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next video. Meanwhile, go get yourself a free copy of the Burnmeister's New Testament at this link.